For Time magazine, it was the silence breakers who spoke out and lit the firestorm that is the scandal of inappropriate and unwanted sexual attention that's engulfed everywhere from Westminster to Hollywood. For FIFA, the international football body, it was Cristiano Ronaldo. And for The Spectator magazine, it was Conservative Queen of Scotland, Ruth Davidson. I speak, of course, of a Person of the Year award. And as we approach the Christmas pudding and brandy snaps end of the run of the pledge for this year, it seems only right that we, as with these other august organisations, pick a suitable winner. So, to get the ball rolling, I'm going for... Actually, why don't we just let her speak for herself?
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this. There's too much politics going on at the moment. Why does she need to do it?
Brenda from Bristol, we support and we salute you, and you spoke for the nation. Oh, by the way, have I mentioned that for Press Gazette, the Journalist of the Year was Nick Ferrari? Just thought you'd like to know.
There have been quite a few shock elections and shock votes this year, and obviously
I love Brenda.
No, I'm saying you as...
Oh, that's what I see.
Trump, Nick Ferrari.
Brexit, Trump and Nick Ferrari.
You know what? I think that Theresa May was saying the same thing after, wasn't she? Brenda had a point. Yeah, I agree. Brenda was amazing.
But who would your nomination be?
My nominee or nominees would be the survivors of Grenfell Tower.
OK.
You know, it's 6 months on and it's just heartbreaking still. You just cannot imagine what those people had to go through, those that lost their lives and obviously those that have survived. And I think it's just a disgrace that more hasn't been done, that so many of them haven't been housed. And I think aside from that, what happened at Grenfell, I believe, is a turning point for our city and actually for our nation in terms of how we treat our poor.
Without, obviously, it was horrific, and this is injecting a serious note into what is a fairly festive programme. But, I mean, the people who are spending Christmas in hotel rooms, that's absolutely appalling for them. Everybody has had an offer. Yeah. Everybody has had an offer. It doesn't mean they have to accept it. And I had the leader of the council who did a phone-in with me yesterday, and she admits the council has lost the trust of these people because it is thought, if you take a temporary offer, because the leader said it is far better to have your own front door that you can go behind rather than going to the same hotel room. But their fear is if they take a lesser property, they then drop down to the bottom of this. And the council admit that that is not true, and they've not done enough.
But when you've already lost so much, to be away from your community, to be far from your children's school, it's a lot. So I understand them, that's what I'm saying.
But practically, we had a lady on this morning on the radio show, and she was saying that, because I asked her if Grenfell should be demolished, because a lot of people are saying, who were in there, they look at it and it's psychologically disturbing and distressing for them. And she was saying, you know, they should knock it down and never build on there again. But, you know, we're going to have to build somewhere to accommodate these people.
And I think they should rebuild a state-of-the-art tower, precisely.
A memorial garden with a state-of-the-art tower
and a new home for those people.
But let's stay with the sort of more festive touch, and where I think we can applaud your idea, because Carol, you quite rightly have spoken about the lack of grit or whatever it was. You talk about literally about the lack of grit on the roads. These people who came through and these people who are building community organisations, they are showing real British... It doesn't actually... They're probably from Morocco or Ethiopia. They are showing what the British grit was.
And
so I think it's a damn
all of the people who came to support them, and like you, Rachel, that were on the ground helping all of those victims, it just showed a real sort of unifying moment.
Yeah, damn fine nomination.
Actually, I was just going to say, Paul Ross, who I did the show, he was saying that because he went to help, and he took a Somalian family in for 5 days, I think, into his house. But he said they've been sending him cards and letters ever since to say thank you, which is a sweet thing to do. OK, my person of the year is Prince Philip.
Oh, now, I love him.
Yeah, he gave up this year after 70 years by Her Majesty's side. I love, when I was a young journalist, and you'll remember this, if he was on a job, you always got beside him because you knew he was going to do something outrageously bad and naughty and say something terrible. And I mean, I love his brusqueness and the fact he has no filter and he doesn't give a stuff about political correctness. He says it as it is. And here's just some of the examples of not giving a stuff. Let's have a look at this. Stop it.
Pay attention, because we're now going to see the world's most experienced placard veil recorder.
Right, it will go in a garden, which complements it.
You don't sound entirely native,
What
have you done wrong to be exiled? Where do you come from? Philippines. Philippines, I say half empty. They're all here.
I've just got some really good ones here. Listen. He said to a Scottish driving instructor, "How do you keep the natives off the booze long enough to pass the test?" On Ethiopian art in 1996, it looks like something my daughter would bring back from school. To a woman in 1984, he was in Kenya, he said to this, he leaned over, he said, "You are a woman, aren't you?" Let me just say this last one. And at a Bangladeshi youth club in 2002, he walked in and went, "So who's on drugs here?"
He's a one-man walking antidote to political correctness.
I
applaud him.
Me too,
As I applaud you, by the way.
I want to hear Greg's stories and indeed yours, Rachel. I met him about 5-6 years ago at a journalist charity thing that came along. It's the first time I'd met him. And he put his hand in and said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, sir, I present a radio programme." "What's on the radio programme?" I said, "Well, sir, we do stories about politicians who make cock-ups and footballers who are caught in disgrace in hotel rooms." And without missing a beat, and even then he was 94, so he said, "Well, you're never short of material then." Incredible.
Do you know, he was in the White House when he was at a dinner with Nixon. Now, this is just coming to he was at a dinner with Nixon, and people were going and filtering off. And a butler who was there came to serve him a drink. And he said to the butler, "I will have one with you if you let me serve you." And apparently, him and the butler sat all night. Everyone went home, and him and the butler sat all night together having a chat. And also, he's coined a phrase called, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, it's called dontopiology, which means the science of opening your mouth and putting your foot in it.
Yeah, that's it.
Before I get your nomination, you must have met him a bunch of times.
I had lunch there once with him and the Queen. I remember saying, "You know, he thinks he's got Alzheimer's." And he hadn't got Alzheimer's at all. He just forgets things. Well, we all forget things. I think he's great for the same reason.
Yeah.
I think somebody who doesn't give a toss.
Yes, he really does.
Of what he says and who he... And he's extremely funny.
Yes, that's
like
the thing. He does it with, with wit
sort of
and humour.
It's people with independent spirit. It's Brenda in Bristol who bucked the trend. It's the Grenfell guys. It's Prince Philip. See if we can keep it going. Rachel, who's your nominee or nomination?
Well, it's another old bloke who I think has been a...
What, Boris?
Nick, you know he's considerably younger than you.
Not that much, that's 3 anyway.
No, but I mean, I'm with Carol on this because I've gone for a nonagenarian as well, who is Sir David Attenborough. And I think he's just had like you, Nick, he's had a fantastic year. He has. He's got us all talking about things that are important. In particular, plastics in the ocean and the fragility of the health and fragility of the ocean, which is a real... I mean, Sky's doing a wonderful thing on ocean rescue. Everyone's much more aware now of buying single-use plastic bottles. And... You know, Blue Planet is a fantastic export for the BBC, and, you know, we're making the best television in the world.
And also, it's brought families together, because actually it's family viewing.
Will never be the same.
It's like, for those, in fact, none of you will know what I'm talking about, but if you're of a generation, Sunday night was the Forsyth saga, and this is exactly the same. It is incredible. It is an actually appointment to view television.
But this is educational.
Do you think, and I pick the word deliberately, has he turned the tide, I say that deliberately, about marine conservation? Do you think he's really achieved that?
Well, it's helped move in the right direction.
Goodness, I hope so. I mean, I think it's really good that, you know, we've got... Actually, Michael Gove seems to be listening to all these messages. You know, there are people, sort of neocon, rational optimists who sort of say, you know, no, the planet's actually getting more and more healthy all the time, which makes my blood boil. It's clear that the planet is actually in crisis. And it's not just pollution, it's also overpopulation and climate change, and we've all got to grip it.
Okay. I got to know him a bit when I was at the BBC,
of course.
obviously. And the really I once had a long discussion with him because I told him I didn't believe that. If you've ever seen that shot where he's doing a piece to camera and behind the bear comes down and picks out a salmon, and my argument was, you must have tied the salmon there. I mean, and he swore to it's not true. It just happened. But you know how often does that happen?
But he is a wonder. He also says, you know, because he was controller of BBC Two at one time and could have gone on through the management system of the BBC. And I said to him, well, why didn't you carry on? And he said, because I wasn't very good at it. Well, we've got to move on. So very independent spirit there, independent spirit, but we're celebrating all these independent spirits. Greg, you have to keep that spirit going.
Well, last year mine was Nigel Farage.
Yes.
Who I had been incredibly successful, but I disliked and didn't like what he stood for. So I'm going to carry on that this year.
Another popular choice.
Kim Jong-un. And the reason I'm choosing Kim Jong-un, which is, I mean, yours are all easy, aren't they? You know, people everybody loves. Yeah. Nobody loves Kim Jong-un, could they? Nobody.
No, they don't. No.
Rocket Man.
But he's still there.
Yeah.
And he's actually stood up against Donald Trump. And if you have to choose between the two, and it's quite difficult, isn't it? But he stood up against Donald Trump.
Only because he murders his relatives.
Exactly. I was just going to say, anyone who dissents, they're dead.
Look, he does terrible things.
The brink of World War.
He kills his own family.
He does terrible things.
And his own people.
Yes.
But he has survived, and what he has shown is Trump can say what he likes and do what he likes. He can't do anything about it. And I think that makes him quite my person of the year. Now, I can understand this might not be popular amongst the rest of them.
Did he just inch it over Mugabe then?
Yeah.
Was it difficult for him?
No, Mugabe would have been many years ago, wouldn't he? He was on the way down. Kim Jong-un, he is there because he stood up against Trump, and Trump has discovered there is nothing he can do about it.
Well, he could do something about it, and if he got let loose, he would.
No, he couldn't do anything about it because he knows that if you take any action, unless they can get rid of him, shoot him or something, which I suspect is quite difficult, unless they can do that, actually, he can wipe out Seoul like that. And that's what they've discovered. And that's why I think he's my man of the year, my person of the year.
I'm not sure I'm with you on that one.
I don't think we won't have a vote. That would be a little unfair. Because how could you choose between Philip and Grenfell? But I don't think you'd be... I think you'd be in the relegation zone.
No, but Grenfell, I can understand. The other rest of you went for soft options, didn't you? I mean, it was so easy. I mean, you know...
No, Brenda was inspired.
Prince Philip...
Brenda
was inspired. In literally...
Anyway...